Okay, so I'm going to put the link for this full interview or entertainment or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put the full link for this, but I think that you need to listen to this, okay? So I'm just going to play it. She's asking him about this specific vaccine, and they're talking about the trust between the people taking the vaccine and the distributors and it being on the market. See, they're all talking about it like it's something in a shop, like you're going to go and pick some sweets. Anyway, just listen to this.
And we do have safeguards to make sure that as we saw, that the company is presenting the full aspects of its data, which is why all of the data is independently reviewed. The problem, I think, is that there are people trying to just kind of put the best foot forward and show the best efficacy when really it's not necessary. Let's be honest about the efficacy of the vaccine. Let's be honest about kind of what its limitations are, and incorporate it into the arsenal of vaccines that the world has to use against COVID. I mean, there are some clear advantages to this vaccine in terms of being able to store it and distribute it in much more efficacious ways than some of the other vaccines on the market.
And would this be a single or double dose vaccine?
This is a double dose vaccine, so it doesn't have that advantage of being single dose. It is a double dose vaccine, but it is much easier to store. It doesn't require deep freeze, so it can be distributed much wider in the world than some of the other vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna.
So, Doctor, more than a third of U.S. adults have now received at least one dose of a coronavirus vaccine, which is very good news.
More than a third of all adults have received at least one vaccination, okay? Now listen to the next bit. If you've received this vaccination, I hope you are aware of what's coming next. Check this out.
Still don't know whether fully vaccinated people can spread the virus to others, correct? What's the latest on that research?
Yeah, I mean, the best data that we have is that you are much, much less likely to spread or get infected with COVID.
So you've taken this vaccine as an experimental... Anyway, right, this vaccine is less likely for you to catch COVID. It's less likely for you to spread it, and it's less likely for you to show symptoms. So you've taken a vaccine on the hope that it's less likely for it to work against rather than work for. Okay, right, listen to this.
If you've been fully vaccinated, to the point where we've seen the CDC change the recommendation that fully vaccinated people can be, if they're indoors, can be unmasked and not observing social distancing. We do think that's a recommendation that's going to get extended and continued. But there is this small chance that you can be a carrier, that you could transmit the virus, although we do think that you are much, much less likely to do so if you're fully vaccinated.
They think you are less likely to carry it, catch it, or pass it on. What the fuck are you even taking this vaccine for?
Vaccine is perfect, no matter how close they get to 100%. It's not expected to be a perfect system, but it's a good enough system that it will end this pandemic.
Right, and interestingly, the University of Oxford is looking at whether mixing vaccines could be more effective against the coronavirus than getting 2 doses of the same vaccine. What are researchers looking at to specifically determine efficacy?
Yeah, I think you're following the patients along. You want to see, if you mix and match, whether you have less transmission. It's really hard to tease out differences when you've got 94% efficacy rates. So you're going to need a large study and lots of follow-up. But the immune system reacts in different ways to different vaccines, and that's why we see the different efficacies. Mixing and matching, we really have no way of knowing what it's going to do or whether it's going to be.
They have no way of knowing what it's going to do to you when you start playing with these vaccines. Listen to this.
See the different efficacies. Mixing and matching, we really have no way of knowing what it's going to do or whether it's going to be an advantageous or a disadvantage to do so until we do the studies. And so I think it's too early to tell.
Now, this is the $1,000,000 question, and listen, watch him fucking squirm when he realises what he's just said. Listen to what this guy says after she's asked him this question.
Well, where do we stand on that research, doctor? Because we still don't know how long the protection from these vaccines lasts, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we're still following those phase 1 trial candidates to make sure that, they're still protected, and we're being very careful. The CDC is being very careful when it determines kind of how long.
Be very careful. They're being very careful to track these phase 1 people that are out there now mingled in between everybody else that don't have a clue what's going to come into contact with them a year onwards after they've been on experimental trials for something that's not going to stop them from catching it, transmitting it, or passing it on, or showing symptoms of it, but possibly, hopefully, less likely in the fact that there might be a certain outcome to that being possible.
The vaccine said, they've said only 90 days at this point. We do expect a longer. CDC is being very careful when it determines kind of how long the vaccine said. They've said only 90 days at this point. We do expect a longer.
So he's just said, you take that vaccine, it works for 90 days. I'll replay it again.
Time period to be. Yeah, I mean, we're still following those phase 1 trial candidates to make sure that, they're still protected, and we're being very careful. The CDC is being very careful when it determines kind of how long the vaccine said. They've said only 90 days at this point. We do expect a longer time period to be announced shortly, but they're being cautious because we really don't know. We need the longitudinal data. We need to follow those subjects to see kind of if there's a dip in efficacy of this vaccine, and if so, when it is.
They're going to follow the subjects. Like I said, you need to watch this video in full, and you need to do your own research before you start shoving this shit in your body, because honestly, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. The guy's just said, I'll play it again actually.
Wait.
Just because we really don't know. We need the longitude days at this point. We do very careful. The CDC is being very careful when it determines kind of how long the vaccine said. They've said only 90 days at this point. We do expect a longer time period to be announced shortly, but they're being cautious because we really don't know. We need the longitudinal data. We need to follow those subjects to see kind of if there's a dip in efficacy of this vaccine, and if so, when it is.
Wait. So you're saying right now the vaccines are only claiming that they have 3 months worth of protection once you're fully vaccinated?
Did you see his face? He looks like his arse has fell out. I'm telling you, you need to watch these videos because it's going to be too late soon.